Hello, my name is Dr. John Naranja. I'm an attorney at the Diller Law firm. We've had a number of clients who had sustained a spinal cord injury, and I'd like to present what spinal cord injuries are and how you can better understand what happens in spinal cord injuries. So in order to understand spinal cord injuries, it's first important to understand the spinal cord anatomy. What we're looking at here is a diagram of the side of the body, and we can see the bones of the spine located here in different colors. The yellow part located here, or where my arrow is the cervical spine, or the spine that's part of the neck. The blue part here is the thoracic spine, or the part of the chest and lower part of the abdomen. And then the lower part of the spine here is the lumbar spine in green, and the lowest part is the sacrum and coccyx or tailbone. The bony part of the spinal column actually houses the spinal cord. And if we were to take out a piece of the vertebral body of the spinal column, we would then be able to look inside, and that's what's represented here by this vertebra. If we look inside the vertebra, the body is located here, and that's the front, and the back, where you can kind of feel on yourself, on your neck, the spinous process is located at the back. In between these bony structures is the spinal cord. Now, what I'd like to do next is I'd like to take a closer look at what that spinal cord looks like and its function. What we're looking at here is the spinal cord, but it's cut down the middle so that we're looking right down the barrel of the spinal cord. When we do that, we can see that the spinal cord is actually divided into different sections, or what are called tracts. There are sensory tracts represented here by the blue, and all that means is these are tracts where it allows you to feel or to sense things. And then there are motor tracts represented here by the color red. And what those do is allows movement or motor control for muscles, as well as motor control of things that are what are called autonomic pathways. When we look at this area of the spinal cord, then now we can understand where an injury to certain parts of the spinal cord will affect sensory, or the feeling of sensation, or they can affect the motor part, or the ability to move your body or move parts of your body. Therefore, we can now understand that when we look at spinal cord injuries, we can divide them into what's called paralysis, where there's a complete severance of the spinal cord, or paresis, in which there's a partial injury to the spinal cord. When we think about a full injury to the spinal cord, let me go back to the original cut of the spinal cord that we're looking at. If we were to have an injury that includes the whole spinal cord, in this case, you would have injury to both the motor and sensory parts of the spinal cord. If you only have a partial injury to the spinal cord, then the type of symptoms that you would experience, or signs you would experience, is based on the area of the spinal cord that was injured. And these are called incomplete spinal cord injuries. So when we go back now to the terminology of spinal cord injury, a paralysis refers to this complete loss of the spinal cord function. A paresis reflects a partial loss, and it could be either a loss of the muscle or a loss of the sensation. So now going just to the incomplete types of spinal cord injuries, there are different names that are attributed to the incomplete injuries. Those names aren't as important as understanding that if you get half of the spinal cord injured, that's one type of syndrome. If you get the front part of the spinal cord injured, that's another syndrome. And there's a whole nother syndrome where you can just get the central part of the spinal cord injured, and that's another type of syndrome for incomplete spinal cord injuries. When we talk about complete spinal cord injuries, however, there are different types that can occur. You can have types that include monoplegia, or where one leg is involved. You can have hemiplegia, in which just half the body is involved. You can have diplegia, in which just the upper extremities are involved. And then terms you've probably heard before include paraplegia, in which just the lower extremities are involved, and quadriplegia, in which the whole body is involved, both upper and lower extremities. In order to determine what kind of symptoms that are involved with a paralysis, it's determined by the level of the cord in which the injury occurred. So, for example, if the injury occurs at a complete level in the cervical spine or the neck, you get this total tetraplegia. If it occurs at the thoracic spine, again, depending on what level of the thoracic spine, you can get a paraplegia. If it gets even lower on the vertebral column or spinal cord, you can get even a lower level of paraplegia. Remember, the tetraplegia is just another word for quadriplegia. As far as treatment for spinal cord injuries, there are both acute or right at the time of the injury interventions, as well as later interventions once you determine what kind of spinal cord injury occurs. One type of treatment that I'll focus on is what happens in a complete spinal cord injury in which the bony parts of the spinal column have been completely disrupted. This is represented here in this diagram. And then again here, where remember that one of the functions of the spinal cord is to offer stability of the whole spinal column. And if one part of that spinal column is disrupted, then what can happen is the whole upper portion can be unstable over the lower portion. So when this type of instability occurs, then the treatment is to try and get this back into its proper location, as shown here, and using hardware or instrumentation to put this whole thing back into place and then make the whole body construct or vertebral body column axis stable again in order not to put any more pressure on the remainder of the spinal cord. So this was just a brief summary of spinal cord injuries. Hopefully that will help you understand the extent of damage that can occur with the spinal cord and what effects that has. Thank you.